That midnight, Mama Bako, our neighbour, stood behind my mother's window, performing her rituals. When she finished, she forgot her stick behind my mother's window, then left for her own room. I stood there, trembling in fear, unable to utter a word, but she didn't see me. After she had left, I went to Mama's door and I knocked countless times, but Mama neither responded nor opened the door. When Mama Bako returned for her stick and found me knocking on Mama's door, she looked at me and then looked away, reached for her stick and immediately went away. That unforgettable midnight, it was a few minutes past 12 a.m. I woke up to go ease myself, and as I unlocked my room door, I saw my neighbour, Mama Bako, standing beside my mother's window, wearing a white robe with a calabash in her hand. I made sure she didn't see me, and then I paused and tiptoed back, and I stood behind my mother's chicken cage, which was kept before the house, totally forgetting the reason I came outside the first place. May whatever business you do henceforth crash before your very eyes. For as long as you continue living in this house, whatever money you make automatically becomes mine spiritually. You will work and work, but will reap just a little. You're raising shoulders up and down simply because your business is doing well and mine isn't, she said, and then started to sprinkle the content in the calabash behind my mother's window. I stood there shivering, wondering if Mama wasn't hearing her and was too scared to utter a word. When I noticed that she was done, I quickly hid myself beside the cage till she passed, and she then went into her own room. I then went to Mama's door and began to knock on it, but she didn't respond. That was when Mama Bako returned for her stick that she had forgotten. As soon as she stepped into her room and closed the door, I knocked again on Mama's door, and this time she responded immediately. "Who is that?" she asked. "Mama, Mama, it's me!" I exclaimed. Mama opened her door looking so frightened, asking me what I was doing there at that time of the night. "Mama, I saw Mama Bako putting something behind your window," I said to her in a shaky tone, pointing towards her window. She grabbed her torchlight, and together we went to check behind her window, but found nothing. "What exactly did you see?" Mama asked again, and I described what I saw. "Maybe it was a dream or a hallucination," Mama said, but I swore to her that I was telling the truth. The Mama Bako I know can never do such. In fact, she remains one of the nicest persons I've ever come across. "That's my problem with you. You trust people too much," I said to her angrily, leaving for my room. I sat on my bed that night, thinking about what I saw. The following morning, when I woke up, Mama Bako was the first person I saw, already sweeping the compound, and as soon as she saw me, she paused and began to smile. "Sidi, good morning," she greeted, but I looked at her, rolled my eyes, hissed, and then left for Mama's room. The following night, I kept checking my window to see if Mama Bako would return to my mother's window, but she never did. 3 months later, one particular night, I was finding it very difficult to sleep. I tried all I could, but I wasn't just feeling sleepy. And then I started to hear footsteps. I got up quickly to check what it was, and lo and behold, it was Mama Bako. I had already made up my mind to challenge her this time, so I rushed outside and met her standing behind my mother's window again, holding the stick with a calabash in the other hand. "Mama, come and see!" I screamed, and immediately Mama Bako stretched forth her stick towards me, and suddenly I was unable to speak or hear. The more I tried to force myself to speak, the more sharp pain I felt down my throat. I grabbed my neck and was still trying to force myself to speak, not minding the pains. I had never been so scared in my entire life. Mama Bako then walked slowly and majestically towards me, and then stood before me, staring directly at me. "Let your ears be open to whatever I have to say," she said, and immediately It seemed as though something flew out of my ears. In your entire life, do not try to challenge me ever again. What powers do you think you have? A mere mortal trying to challenge someone who wines and dines with spirits and devils? How dare you? I stood before her, shivering. I thought I was going to die. She turned her back swiftly again, and then walked back to my mother's window and began her incantations afresh. She picked up the calabash she had dropped on the ground on sighting me, and began to sprinkle the content on my mother's window, speaking in a language that I didn't even understand. I was still standing there, struggling to survive. The sharp pain deep down my throat was becoming so intense. I fell on my knees and I crawled to her, gripped the helm of her garment and was trying to apologize, but I was unable to utter a word. The more I tried, the more my tongue twisted. She looked at me and looked away, and then looked back. Will you learn to keep your mouth shut and stop intervening in whatever does not concern you henceforth? I nodded sporadically, with a hand holding my neck, and the other still gripping the helm of her garment. Get up. I will free you, but never ever say a word about all these to anyone. The day you will try it will be your last day. She bent over and whispered to my right ear. She looked so different from the Mama Bako that we all knew. Mama Bako that was always struggling to pronounce some words, who also had this accent that majority of our neighbours were always mocking her with, suddenly became someone who was speaking in very good and clear English. She then marched towards Mama's window, picked up the stick she left standing on its own, and began to walk out. I tried saying something to remind her that I was still unable to speak, and all of a sudden I began to cough profusely. I was still there coughing when Mama came out of her room holding a torchlight, flashing it directly at me. "Holy Ghost fire! Who is that?" she queried in exclamation. "Mama, it's me," I managed to say, and I became so shocked that I could now speak. On hearing my voice, Mama hurried to me and pulled me up, and then took me to her room, and began to ask me questions that I couldn't even provide answers to for the fear of Mama Bako. I sat before her on the bed, panting so heavily and shivering, and began to ponder on all that had happened during the encounter. "Sidi, is there something you're not telling? Tell me what happened." Mama said, but I only looked at her and then looked away as tears dripped down my cheeks. "So if I decide to keep it a secret, will I watch my mother just die like that?" I thought to myself. Mama has been the only one taking care of me ever since my father passed. We moved to this compound about 12 years ago when I was just 6 years old, and we met some neighbours here, including Mama Bako. Some have left, while some are still around, but Mama Bako has been the closest to Mama since we moved in here. At times, they eat from the same plate, sit together, crack jokes, talk, unknown to us that Mama Bako had been an example of the popular adage which says, "The green snake under the green grass." Mama had been in and out of hospital, and we've equally spent so much to keep her alive. She used to sell fabrics, buying them in bulk from Cotonou. But after spending so much on her health, the business went down and she started to fry akara down the road, while I helped her out each morning because I just finished secondary school as at the time. Mama asked me countless times if I was okay, and I finally nodded that I was. I couldn't tell her that I wasn't after Mama Bako's warning, and Mama and I slept together in her room. Our house had 2 buildings in it. Mama and I were living in one room, but we later decided to rent another room in the other building so I would stay there, as the rooms were so small and Mama's room could no longer accommodate us both. That morning, when it was dawn, Mama and I set out to her akara joint. I wasn't just happy, so I was moody, and Mama again asked me if all was well, and I nodded. Well, The first set of akara we fried, the first person that came to patronize us was Mama Bako, smiling sheepishly. "Mama Sidi, good morning," she greeted, smiling from ear to ear. Mama paused on seeing her and then smiled at her so cheerfully. "How's your family, Mama Bako?" she asked. "Well, we are fine, thank you," she said, approaching us. I sat there so furious and scared at the same time. I was pretending to rearrange the papers we were going to use for Mama's akara sales that we already arranged from home. I didn't just want to talk to her, and I also didn't want Mama to notice anything. "Sidi, how are you?" she greeted. "Fine," I answered nonchalantly. Mama then turned and looked at me. I knew she was wondering why I answered Mama Bako like that for the first time in her presence. "Sidi, are you okay?" Mama asked, but I ignored her and continued with what I was doing. "Please let her be. She's just being a child," Mama Bako said, but I raised my head and looked at her, rolling my eyes, which left Mama wondering, through her expressions, what was really wrong with me. Mama Bako was there with Mama for a few more minutes because Mama just started putting the balls of akara into the hot oil when she arrived. They talked about a few things, even laughed together. The more they laughed, the more my heart broke. I wish I could tell Mama who Mama Bako really was, and would she have even believed me. When the first set of akara was ready, Mama made me wrap some for Mama Bako for free. I was reluctant handing it over to her, but when Mama wouldn't stop staring at me, I had to compose myself. "Thank you very much, my friend. More sales," she said to Mama, smiling from ear to ear as she walked away, acting like a saint. "Sidi, what is wrong with you? Why were you being rude to Mama Bako like that?" "Mama, it surprises me that after all I've told you about her, you still talk to her, even going as far as telling her things about yourself and your business. The earlier you realize that that woman is evil, the better for us. Mama Bako is actually a nice person. We've been friends since we moved in here, and I haven't noticed any bad side of her since then. I wish I could say a few things about who you call a friend, but sadly I can't. I just pray that God keeps you safe from unfriendly friends," I said. "Amen," she responded with a nod. We arrived home later that day. I was in the kitchen preparing what we would eat, while Mama was in her room resting. Our kitchen was in between the two buildings in the compound, which was also used by all the tenants in the house. Some of our neighbours had gone out for their day-to-day activities. Some of their children were in school, while some had finished making breakfast and in their rooms. My heart almost popped out of my chest when Mama Bako appeared in the kitchen all of a sudden. I looked at her and then turned swiftly, looking away. I was trembling in fear as the whole of my body began to shiver. "Sidi, where is your mother?"